Hey Marius, how are you doing? I know I haven't done the the rules and guides and all that stuff on Discord. I keep forgetting. I have it on my to-do though. I'm doing all right. Yeah, I had a really great day off yesterday. Haven't been that relaxed in a long, long time, so that was nice. I'll switch over to to this screen. Yeah. So, how's your weekend been? Yes, I have both my lights on. Good. Just waiting another 10 seconds before official start of the stream. I like to give it a nice 2-minute buffer for people to come in. Ooh, yeah. Nice. It was really nice. I had a 3-day weekend, so of course I streamed on Friday and I streamed today, and then yesterday I took completely off. I just played video games all day. It was, I haven't had a legit all day off because there have been a couple of days off where you have chores and stuff that need to be done, and then I love streaming, but you have to be kind of on, and then you have to do stuff before and after and all of that stuff. So yeah, but it was really nice to have. Why? Okay. I keep there are these bugs that have been cropping up lately, and there was one on Friday that was bothering me during story time, and there was another one that was about to start bothering me this story time. But I'm not letting it. Yeah, it was a good day off. Oh, and we got news this week that they are going to make everybody over the age of 16 eligible for for the vaccine. So it might make it trickier to find a time because everybody's going to be like, hey, I can get it, sweet, I'm on it. So we'll see how that goes. There was the possibility of maybe getting it on last Friday, but that didn't really happen. Should we go ahead and get started? This is, we might go a little over, but I don't mind that if you don't. Oh, nice. That's awesome. Yeah, my parents both got vaccinated because they're over the age of 70, so, age-wise, they're at risk. And then, oh, yeah, perfect. Yeah. Well, I'm older than your mom. I'm 40. It's still kind of weird to me that I am old enough to be some of my coworkers' mom. I don't feel it. I definitely don't look it, but I like to say that my beauty technique is every time I see a wrinkle, I add on a few pounds and I smooth out the wrinkle. By the way, this is what I used to look like about 20 years ago. Let's see. Yeah. This is what my brain says I look like at all times right now. Yeah. Oh, hang on. But now I'm like the second oldest person that works at the store where I work, at the bookstore. It's still kind of weird. I thought that I was the oldest, and then I realized that one of the people that we hired 6 months ago, I don't know how old he is, but he's definitely older than me. But anyways, yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So we are reading The Secret. Oh, yeah, gotta hide Maestro. Sorry about that. We are finishing The Secret of Chimneys. There we go. Chapter 24. the house at Dover. "You don't mind, I suppose," said Mundell after a minute or two, "if I drive rather fast? I started later than I meant to." It had seemed to Anthony that they were proceeding at a terrific speed already, but he soon saw that it was nothing compared to what Bundell could get out of the Panhard if she tried. "Some people," said Bundell as she slowed down momentarily to pass through a village, "are terrified of my driving. Poor old father, for instance. Nothing would induce him to come up with me in his old bus." Privately, Anthony thought Lord Caterham was entirely justified. Driving with Bundell was not a sport to be indulged in by nervous middle-aged gentlemen. "But you don't seem nervous a bit," continued Bundell approvingly as she swept round a corner on two wheels. "I'm in pretty good training, you see," explained Anthony gravely. "Also," he added as an afterthought, "I'm rather in a hurry myself." "Shall I speed her up a bit more?" asked Bundell kindly. "Good Lord, no," said Anthony hastily. "We're averaging about 50 as it is." "I'm burning with curiosity to know the reason for this sudden departure," said Bundell after executing a fanfare upon the klaxon which must temporarily have deafened the neighborhood. "But I suppose I mustn't ask? You're not escaping from justice, are you?" "I'm not quite sure," said Anthony. "I shall know soon." "That Scotland Yard man isn't as much of a rabbit as I thought," said Mundell thoughtfully. "Battle's a good man," agreed Anthony. "You ought to have been in diplomacy," remarked Bundell. "You don't part with much information, do you?" "I was under the impression that I babbled." "Oh, boy, you're not eloping with Mademoiselle Brunn by any chance?" "Not guilty," said Anthony with fervor. There was a pause of some minutes before which Bundell caught up and passed 3 other cars. Then she asked suddenly, "How long have you known Virginia?" "It's a difficult question to answer," said Anthony with perfect truth. "I haven't actually met her very often, and yet I seem to have known her for a long time." Bundell nodded. "Virginia's got brains," she remarked abruptly. "She's always talking nonsense, but she's got brains all right. She was frightfully good about Czechoslovakia, I believe. Oh, she was frightfully good out in Czechoslovakia, I believe. If Tim Revell had lived, he'd have had a fine career, mostly owing to Virginia. She worked for him tooth and nail. She did everything in the world she could for him, and I know why, too." "Because she cared for him?" Anthony sat looking very straight ahead of him. "No, because she didn't. Don't you see? She didn't love him. She never loved him. And so she did everything on earth she could to make up. That's Virginia's all over. But don't you make any mistake about it. Virginia was never in love with Tim Revell." "You seem very positive," said Anthony, turning to look at her. Bundell's little hands were clenched on the steering wheel, and her chin was stuck in a determined manner. "I know a thing or two. I was only a kid at the time of her marriage, but I heard 1 or 2 things, and knowing Virginia, I can put them together easily enough. Tim Revell was bowled over by Virginia. He was Irish, you know, most attractive, with a genius for expressing himself well. Virginia was quite young, 18. She couldn't go anywhere without seeing Tim in a state of picturesque misery, vowing he'd shoot himself or take a drink if she didn't marry him. Girls believe these things, or used to. We've advanced a lot in the last 8 years. Virginia was carried away by the feelings she thought she'd inspired. She married him, and she was an angel to him always. She wouldn't have been half as much of an angel if she'd loved him. There's a lot of the devil in Virginia, but I can tell you one thing. She enjoys her freedom, and anyone will have a hard time persuading her to give it up." "I wonder why you tell me all this," said Anthony slowly. "It's interesting to know about people, isn't it? Some people, that is." "Oh, let's see. Until the end of the chapter? Not long, actually. It's about 6 pages. And I've already read 3. 5 pages, sorry. If you have any comments, go ahead and put them in the in chat, and I'll read it at the end of the chapter. "I've wanted to know," he acknowledged. And you never have heard from Virginia, but you can trust me for an inside tip from the stables. Virginia's a darling. Even women like her because she isn't a bit of a cat. And anyway, Bundle added, somewhat obscurely, one must be a sport, mustn't one? Oh, certainly, Anthony agreed. Sorry. But he was still puzzled. He had no idea what had prompted Bundle to give him so much information unasked. That he was glad of, he did not deny. Here are the trams, said Bundle with a sigh. Now I suppose I shall have to drive carefully. Might be as well, agreed Anthony. His ideas and Bundle's on the subject of driving carefully hardly coincided. Leaving indignant suburbs behind him, they finally emerged into Oxford Street. Not bad going, eh? Said Bundle, glancing at her wristwatch. Anthony assented fervently. Where do you want to be dropped? Anywhere. Which way are you going? Knightsbridge way. All right, drop me off at Hyde Park Corner. Goodbye, said Bundle, as she drew up to the place indicated. What about the return journey? I'll find my own way back, thanks very much. I have scared him, remarked Bundle. I shouldn't recommend driving with you as a tonic for nervous old ladies, but personally I've enjoyed it. Last time I was in equal danger was when I was charged by a herd of wild elephants. I think you're extremely rude, remarked Bundle. We've not even had one bump today. I'm sorry if you've been holding yourself on my account, retorted Anthony. Don't you think men are really very brave? Said Bundle. That's a nasty one, said Anthony. I retire, humiliated. Bundle nodded and drove on. Anthony hailed a passing taxi. Victoria Station, he said to the driver as he got in. When he got to Victoria, he paid off the taxi and inquired for the next train to Dover. Unfortunately, he had just missed one. Resigning himself to wait for something over an hour, Anthony paced up and down, his brows knit. Once or twice he shook his head impatiently. The journey to Dover was uneventful. Arrived there, Anthony passed quickly out of the station, and then, as though suddenly remembering, he turned back again. There was a slight smile on his lips as he asked to be directed to Huntsmere, Langley Road. Okay. The road in question was a long one, leading right out of the town. According to the porter's instructions, Huntsmere was the last house. Anthony trudged along steadily. Little pucker had reappeared between his eyes. Nevertheless, there was a new elation in his manner, as always when danger was near at hand. Huntsmere was, as the porter had said, the last house in Langley Road. It stood well back, enclosed in its own grounds, which were ragged and overgrown. The place, Anthony judged, must have been empty for many years. A large iron gate swung rustily on its hinges, and the name on the gate-post was half obliterated. A lonely spot, muttered Anthony to himself, and a good one to choose. He hesitated a minute or two, glanced quickly up and down the road, which was quite deserted, and then slipped quietly past the creaking gate into the overgrown drive. He walked up a little ways, and then stood listening. He was still some distance from the house. Not a sound could be heard anywhere. Some fast yellowing leaves detached themselves from one of the trees overhead, and fell with a soft rustling sound that was almost sinister in the stillness. Anthony started, then smiled. Nerves, he muttered to himself. Never know I had such things. He went up the drive. Presently, as the drive curved, he slipped into the shrubbery, and so continued his way unseen from the house. Suddenly he stood still, peering out through the leaves. Some distance away a dog was barking, but it was a sound nearer at hand that had attracted Anthony's attention. His keen hearing had not been mistaken. A man came rapidly round the corner of the house, a short, square, thick-set man, foreign in appearance. He did not pause, but walked steadily on, circling the house and disappearing again. Anthony nodded to himself. Sentry, he murmured. They do the thing quite well. As soon as he had passed, Anthony went on, diverging on the left, and so following in the footsteps of the sentry. His own footsteps were quite noiseless. The wall of the house was on its right, and presently he came to where a broad blur of light fell on the gravelled walk. The sound of several men talking together was clearly audible. "My God, what double-dyed idiots," murmured Anthony to himself. "It would serve them right to be given a fright." He stole up to the window, stooping a little so that he should not be seen. Presently he lifted his head very carefully to the level of the sill and looked in. Half a dozen men were sprawling round a table. 4 of them were big, thick-set men with high cheekbones and eyes set in Magyar slanting fashion. The other 2 were rat-like little men with quick gestures. The language that was being spoken was French, but the 4 big men spoke it with the uncertainty and a hoarse, guttural intonation. "The boss?" growled one of those. "When will he be here?" One of the smaller men shrugged his shoulders. "Any time now." "About time, too," growled the fat man. "I have never seen him, this boss of yours, but oh, what great and glorious work might we not have accomplished in these days of idle waiting!" "Fool," said the other little man bitingly. "Getting nabbed by the police is all the great and glorious work you and your precious lot would have been likely to accomplish, and a lot of blundering guerrillas." "Aha!" roared another big, thick-set fellow. "You insult the comrades? I will soon set the sign of the red hand round your throat." He half rose, glaring ferociously at the Frenchman, but one of his companions pulled him about. Sorry, I'm going full rabbit and having a malfunction. Hang on. "I will soon set the sign of the red hand round your throat." He half rose, glaring ferociously at the Frenchman, but one of his companions pulled him back again. "No quarreling," he grunted. "We're going to work together. From all I heard, this King Victor doesn't stand for being disobeyed." In the darkness, Anthony heard the footsteps of the sentry coming his round again, and he drew back behind a bush. "Who's that?" said one of the men inside. "Carlo, going his rounds." "Oh, what about the prisoner?" "He's all right, coming around pretty fast now. He's recovered well from the crack on his head we gave him." Anthony moved gently away. "God, what a lot," he muttered. "They discuss their affairs with an open window, and that fool Carlo goes his round with the tread of an elephant, and the eyes of a bat. And to crown all, the Slovakians and the French are on the point of coming to blows. King Victor's headquarters seem to be in a parlous condition. It would amuse me very much to teach them a lesson." He stood as irresolute for a moment, smiling to himself. From somewhere above his head came a stifled groan. Anthony looked up. The groan came again. Anthony glanced quickly from left to right. Carlo was not due round again just yet. He grasped the heavy Virginia creeper and climbed nimbly He grasped the heavy Virginia creeper and climbed nimbly till he reached the sill of a window. The window was shut. With a tool from his pocket, he soon succeeded in forcing up the catch. He paused a minute to listen, then sprang lightly inside the room. There was a bed in the far corner, and on that bed a man was lying, his figure barely discernible in the gloom. Anthony went over to the bed and flashed his pocket torch on the man's face. It was a foreign face, pale and emaciated, and the head was swathed in heavy bandages. The man was bound hand and foot. He stared up at Anthony like one dazed. Anthony bent over him, and as he did so, he heard a sound behind him and swung round, his hand traveling to his coat pocket. But a sharp command arrested him. "Hands up, Sonny! You didn't expect to see me here, but I happened to catch the same train as you at Victoria." It was Mr. Hiram Fish, who was standing in the doorway. He was smiling, and in his hand was a big blue automatic. "Hey, Ollie, how are you doing? We have come to the end of, putting my strap. We've come to the end of the chapter. Don't worry, we still have plenty more of the story left. But I promised Marius that I would pause at the end of the chapter. So you're heading off for the night now, Marius? Am I saying it right? Is it Marius? I'm doing all right. I had a great, really nice, resty day off yesterday. How are you doing? And how's your weekend been? All right. Thanks for hanging out with me, Marius. I hope you have a good night and I hope you have a great week. Good to hear. So I don't know if you're caught up with the story. Thanks. I hope to. I mean, I'm reading a good book, so it's already a great stream. If you haven't caught up with the story at all, which no worries, it's an espionage story, and so we've got some missing memoirs. There's also a missing jewel, I believe, in there, and secret identities and really fun. Yeah. And I have all of my, well, not all of my story times. I haven't put up Friday's story time up on YouTube. I think I have to, sorry, that's not actually typing. I have to update my playlists too so that they play correctly. But yeah, all of my story times are up on there. So just taking a pause to say goodnight to Marius, and then I'm going to get back to it. So let me put up Maestro, or hide Maestro again so we can, that's my indicator for when I'm chatting and when I'm not. All right. Chapter 25, Tuesday night at Chimneys. Lord Caterham, Virginia, and Bundle were sitting in the library after dinner. It was Tuesday evening. Some 30 hours had elapsed since Anthony's rather dramatic departure. For at least the 7th time Bundle repeated Anthony's parting words, as spoken at Hyde Park Corner. "I'll find my own way back?" echoed Victoria thoughtfully. "Doesn't look as though he's expecting to be away as long as this. And he's left all his things here." "He didn't tell you where he was going?" "No," said Virginia, looking straight in front of her. "He told me nothing." After this, there was a silence for a minute or two. Lord Caterham was the first to break it. "On the whole," he said, "keeping an hotel has some advantages over keeping a country house." "Meaning that little notice they always hang up in your room? Visitors intending departure must leave notice before 12 o'clock? Virginia smiled. "I dare say," he continued, "that I am old-fashioned and unreasonable, in the fashion I know, to pop in and out of a house. Same idea as in a hotel. Perfect freedom of action and no bill at the end." "You are an old grouser," said Bundle. "You've had Virginia and me. What more do you want?" Nothing more," Lord Caterham assured them hastily. "That's not it at all. It's the principle of the thing. It gives one such a restless feeling. I'm quite willing to admit that it's been an almost ideal 24 hours. Peace. Perfect peace. No burglaries or other crimes of violence. No detectives. No Americans. What I complain of is that I should have enjoyed it all so much more if I'd felt really secure. As it is, all the time, I've been saying to myself, one or the other of them is bound to turn up in a minute, and that's spoilt the whole thing." "Well, nobody has turned up," said Bundle. "We've been left severely alone, neglected, in fact. It's odd the way Fish disappeared. Didn't he say anything?" "Not a word. Last time I saw him, he was pacing up and down the rose garden yesterday afternoon, smoking one of those unpleasant cigars of his. After that, he seemed to have just melted into the landscape." "Somebody must have kidnapped him," said Bundle hopefully. "In another day or two, I expect we shall have Scotland Yard dragging the lake to find his dead body," said her father gloomily. "Serves me right. At my time of life I ought to have gone quietly abroad and taken care of my health, and not allowed myself to be drawn into George Lomax's wildcat schemes. He was interrupted by Treadwell. "Well," said Lord Caterham irritably, "what is it?" "The French detective is here, my lord, and would be glad if you could spare him a few minutes." "What did I tell you?" said Lord Caterham. "I knew it was too good to last. Depend upon it, they found Fish's dead body doubled up in that goldfish pond." Treadwell, in his strictly respectful manner, steered him back to the point at issue. "Am I to say that you will see him, my lord?" Yes, bring him up." Treadwell departed. He returned a minute or two later, announcing in a lugubrious tone, "Monsieur Lemoine." The Frenchman came in with a quick, light step. His walk, more than his face, betrayed the fact that he was excited about something. "Good evening, Lemoine," said Lord Caterham. "Have a drink, won't you? I think you know." He bowed punctiliously to the ladies. "At last I make progress. As things are, I felt that you should be acquainted with the discoveries, the very grave discoveries that I have made in the course of the last 24 hours. "I thought there must be something important going on somewhere," said Lord Caterham. "My lord, yesterday afternoon one of your guests left this house in a curious manner. From the beginning, I must tell you, I have had my suspicions. He is a man who comes from the wilds. 2 months ago he was in South Africa. Before that, where?" Virginia drew a sharp breath. For a moment the Frenchman's eyes rested on her doubtfully. Then he went on. "Before that, where? No one can say. And he is just such a one as the man I am looking for. Gay, audacious, reckless. One who would dare anything. I send cable after cable, but I can get no word as to his past life. 10 years ago he was in Canada, yes, but then, since then, silence. My suspicions grow stronger. Then I pick up one day a scrap of paper where he has lately passed along. It bears an address, the address of a house in Dover. Later, as though by chance, I drop that same piece of paper. Out of the tail of my eye I see this Boris, the Herr Slovakian, pick it up and take it to his master. All along I have been sure that this Boris is an emissary of the Comrades of the Red Hand. We know that the comrades are working in with King Victor over this affair. If Boris recognized his chief in Mr. Anthony Cade, would he not do just what he has done, transferred his allegiance? Why should he attach himself otherwise to an insignificant stranger? It was suspicious, I tell you, very suspicious. But almost I am disarmed, for Anthony Cade brings this same paper to me at once, and asks me if I have dropped it. As I say, almost I am disarmed, but not quite, for it may mean that he is innocent, or it may mean that he is very, very clever. I deny, of course, that it is mine, or that I dropped it, but in the meantime I have set inquiries on foot. Only today I have news. The house at Dover has been precipitately abandoned, but up till yesterday afternoon it was occupied by a body of foreigners. Not a doubt but that it was King Victor's headquarters. Now see the significance of these points. Yesterday afternoon Mr. Cade clears out from here precipitately. Ever since he dropped that paper, he must know that the game is up. He reaches Dover, and immediately the gang is disbanded. What the next move will be, I do not know. What is quite certain is that Mr. Anthony Cade will not return here. But, knowing King Victor as I do, I am certain that he will not abandon the game without having one more try for the jewels, and that is when I shall get him. Virginia stood up suddenly. She walked across to the mantelpiece and spoke in a voice that rang cold like steel. "You are leaving one thing out of account, I think, Mr. Lemoine," she said. "Mr. Cade is not the only guest who disappeared yesterday in a suspicious manner." "You mean, madame?" that all you have said applies equally well to another person. What of this Mr. Hiram Fish? Oh, Mr. Fish. Yes, Mr. Fish. Did you not tell us that first night that King Victor had lately come to England from America? So has Mr. Fish come to England from America. It is true that he brought a letter of introduction from a very well-known man, but surely that would be a simple thing for a man like King Victor. Sorry, a simple thing for a man like King Victor to manage. He is certainly not what he pretends to be. Lord Caterham has commented on the fact that when it is a question of the first editions he is supposed to have come here to see, he's always the listener, never the talker. And there are several suspicious facts against him. There was a light in his window the night of the murder. Then take that evening in the council chamber. When I met him on the terrace, he was fully dressed. He could have dropped the paper. You didn't actually see Mr. Cade do so. Mr. Cade may have gone to Dover. If he did, it was simply to investigate. He may have been kidnapped there. I say that there is far more suspicion attached to Mr. Fish's actions than to Mr. Cade's. The Frenchman's voice rang out sharply. From your point of view, that may well be, madame. I do not dispute it, and I agree that Mr. Fish is not what he seems. Well, then, but that makes no difference. You see, madame, Mr. Fish is a Pinkerton's man. What? Cried Lord Caterham. Yes, Lord Caterham. He came over here to trail King Victor. Superintendent Battle and I have known this for some time. Virginia said nothing. Very slowly she sat down again. With those few words, the structure that she had built up so carefully was scattered in ruins about her feet. You see, Lemoine was continuing, we have all known that eventually King Victor would come to Chimneys. It was the one we were sure of catching him. Oh, it was the one place we were sure of catching him. Virginia looked up with an odd light in her eyes, and suddenly she laughed. You've not caught him yet, she said. Lemoine looked at her curiously. No, madame, but I shall. He's supposed to be rather famous for outwitting people, isn't he? The Frenchman's face darkened with anger. This time it will be different, he said between his teeth. He's a very attractive fellow, said Lord Caterham. Very attractive, but surely... Why, you said he was an old friend of Virginia's. That is why, said Virginia composedly, I think Monsieur Lemoine must be making a mistake. Oh, thank you so much for the follow. Is it, Isealith? I'm not really sure. Can I call you C? Or what do you prefer to be called? And feel free to chat a little bit in chat. I will give my introduction at the end of the chapter, which is soon. And her eyes met the detective's steadily, but he appeared in no wise discomfited. Time will show, madame, he said. Do you pretend that it was he who shot Prince Michael? She asked presently. Certainly. But Virginia shook her head. Oh, no, she said. Oh, no. That is one thing I am quite sure of. Anthony Cade never killed Prince Michael. Lemoine was watching her intently. There is a possibility that you are right, madame, he said slowly. A possibility, that is all. It may have been the Slovakian, Boris, who exceeded his orders and fired that shot. Who knows? Prince Michael may have done him some great wrong, and the man sought revenge. He looks a murderous sort of fellow, agreed Lord Caterham. The housemaids, I believe, scream when he passes them in the passages. Well, said Lemoine, I must be going now. I felt it was due to you, my lord, to know exactly how things stand. Very kind of you, I'm sure, said Lord Caterham. Quite certain you won't have a drink? All right, then, good night. I hate that man with his prim little black beard and his eyeglasses, said Bundle, as soon as the door had shut behind him. I hope Anthony does snoo him. I'd love to see him dancing with rage. What do you think about it all, Virginia?" "I don't know," said Virginia. "I'm tired. I should go up to bed." "Not a bad idea," said Lord Caterham. "It's 11:30. As Virginia was crossing the wide hall, she caught sight of a broad back that seemed familiar to her discreetly vanishing through a side door. "Superintendent Battle!" she cried imperiously. The superintendent, for he was indeed he, retraced his steps with a shade of unwillingness. "Yes, Mrs. Ravel?" "Monsieur Lemoine has been here. He says, tell me, is it true, really true, that Mr. Fish is an American detective?" Superintendent Battle nodded. "That's right." "You have known it all along?" Again, Superintendent Battle nodded. Virginia turned away towards the staircase. "I see. Thank you." Until that minute she had refused to believe. And now? Sitting down before her dressing table in her own room, she faced the question squarely. Every word that Anthony had said came back to her fraught with a new significance. Was this the trade that he had spoken of? The trade that he had given up? But then an unusual sound disturbed the even tenor of her meditations. She lifted her head with a start. Her first little gold clock showed the hour to be after 1. Nearly 2 hours she had sat there thinking. Again the sound was repeated, a sharp tap on the window. Virginia went to the window and opened it. Below on the pathway was a tall figure which, even as she looked, stooped for another handful of gravel. For a moment, Virginia's heart beat faster. Then she recognized the massive strength and square-cut outline of the Czechoslovakian Boris. "Yes," she said in a low voice, "what is it?" At the moment it did not strike her as strange that Boris should be throwing gravel at her window at this hour of the night. "What is it?" she repeated impatiently. "I come from the master," said Boris in a low tone which nevertheless carried perfectly. "He has sent for you." He made the statement in a perfectly matter-of-fact tone. "Sent for me?" "Yes, I am to bring you to him. There is a note. I will throw it to you." Virginia stood back a little, and a slip of paper, weighted with a stone, fell accurately at her feet. She unfolded it and read. "My dear," Anthony had written, "I'm in a tight place, but I mean to win through. Will you trust me and come to me?" For quite 2 minutes, Virginia stood there, unmovable, reading those few words over and over again. She raised her head, looking round the well-appointed luxury of the best bedroom, as though she saw it with new eyes. Then she leaned out of the window again. "What am I to do?" she asked. "The detectives are the other side of the house, outside the council chamber. Come down and out through the side door. I will be there. I have a car waiting outside in the road." Virginia nodded. Quickly she changed her dress for one of fawn tricot, and pulled on a little fawn leather hat. Then, smiling a little, she wrote a short note, addressed it to Bundle, and pinned it to the pincushion. She stole quietly downstairs and undid the bolts of the side door. Just a moment she paused. Then, with a little gallant toss of the head, the same toss of the head with which her ancestors had gone into action in the Crusades, she passed through. I'll take a little pause to introduce myself since we're at the end of a chapter. I am Sunny, of course, and I do, well, at the moment it's just story times. I used to do some gaming streams, but for the moment just doing story times because things are a bit hectic in my life at the moment. But yeah, let me put up my socials. This is where I will let people know about when I'm going to be doing story time. And then I've got my YouTubes. Hang on. I cannot see my... There we go. Is that right? Yeah. And then on my YouTube, that's where I put all of my story times. And they're all in playlist form, so you don't have to worry about finding the next part in in the story. You can just click play and go. And of course, all of my pictures right here of my cats, Maestro and Snockings. And when I'm chatting between chapters, that's when you'll see this guy up. He's also like for before and after I do story times or, start the reading. So when he's gone, that means that I'm currently reading. Feel free to say things in a chat if you'd like, and I will see them between chapters. And I will go ahead and continue. Chapter 26, the 13th of October. Too bad it wasn't the Friday, the 13th of October. At 10 o'clock on the morning of Wednesday, the 13th of October, Anthony Cade walked into Harridge's hotel and asked for Baron Lollapretzel, who was occupying a suite there. After suitable and imposing delay, Anthony was taken to the suite in question. The Baron was standing on the hearthrug in a correct and stiff fashion. Little Captain Andrassy, equally correct as to demeanor, but with a slightly hostile attitude, was also present. The usual bows, clicking of heels, and other formal greetings of etiquette took place. Anthony was by now thoroughly conversant with the routine. "You will forgive this early call, I trust, Baron," he said cheerfully, laying down his hat and stick on the table. "As a matter of fact, I have a little business proposition to make to you." "Ah, is that so?" said the Baron. Captain Andrassy, who had never overcome his initial distrust of Anthony, looked suspicious. "Business," said Anthony, "is based on the well-known principle of supply and demand. You want something, the other man has it. The only thing left to settle is the price." The Baron looked at him attentively, but said nothing. "Between a Hexoslovakian nobleman and an English gentleman, the terms should be easily arranged," said Anthony rapidly. He blushed a little as he said it. No, such words do not rise easily to an Englishman's lips, but he had observed on previous occasions the enormous effect of such phraseology upon the Baron's mentality. True enough, the charm worked. "That is so," said the Baron approvingly, nodding his head. "That is entirely so." Even Captain Andrassy appeared to unbend a little, and nodded his head also. "Very good," said Anthony. "I won't beat about the bush any more. What is that you say?" Baron oh, goodness, sorry about that. "What is that you say?" interrupted the Baron. "To beat about the bush? I do not comprehend." "A figure of speech, Baron. To speak in plain English, you want the goods. We have them. The ship is all very well, but it lacks a figurehead. By the ship, I mean the loyalist party of Hexoslovakia. At the present minute, you lack the principal plank of your political program. You are minus a prince. Now supposing, only supposing, that I could supply you with a prince." The Baron stared. "I do not comprehend you in the least," he declared. "Sir," said Captain Andrassy, twirling his mustache fiercely, "you are insulting." "Not at all," said Anthony. "I'm trying to be helpful. Supply and demand, you understand. It's all perfectly fair and square. No princes supplied unless genuine. See trademark. If we come to terms, you'll find it quite all right. I'm offering you the real, genuine article out of the bottom drawer." "Not in the least," the Baron declared again. "Do I comprehend you?" "It doesn't really matter," said Anthony kindly. "I just want you to get used to the idea. To put it vulgarly, I've got something up my sleeve. Just get hold of this. You want a prince. Under certain conditions, I will undertake to supply you with one." The Baron and Andrassy stared at him. Anthony took up his hat and stick again, and prepared to depart. "Just think it over. Now, Baron, there is one thing further. You must come down to Chimneys this evening. Captain Andrassy also." Sorry. "Several very curious things are likely to happen there. Shall we make an appointment? Say in the council chamber at 9 o'clock? Thank you, gentlemen. I may rely upon you to be there?" The Baron took a step forward and looked searchingly in Anthony's face. "Mr. Cade," he said, not without dignity, "it is not, I hope, that you wish to make fun of me?" Anthony returned his gaze steadily. "Baron," he said, and there was a curious note in his voice, "when this evening is over, I think you will be the first to admit that there is more earnest than jest about this business." Bowing to both men, he left the room. His next call was in the city, where he sent in his card to Mr. Herman Isaacstein. After some delay, Anthony was received by a pale and exquisitely dressed underling, with an engaging manner and a military title. "You wanted to see Mr. Isaacstein, didn't you?" said the young man. "I'm afraid he is most awfully busy this moment. Board meetings and all that sort of thing, you know. Is it anything that I can do?" "I must see him personally," said Anthony, and added carelessly, "I've just come up from Chimneys." The young man was slightly staggered by the mention of Chimneys. "Oh," he said doubtfully. "Well, I'll see." "Tell him it's important," said Anthony. "Message from Lord Catherine?" suggested the young man. "Something of the kind," said Anthony, "but it's imperative that I should see Mr. Isaacstein at once." 2 minutes later, Anthony was conducted into the sumptuous inner sanctum, where he was principally impressed by the immense size and roomy depths of the leather-covered armchairs. Mr. Isaacstein rose to greet him. "You must forgive my looking you up like this," said Anthony. "I know that you're a busy man, and I'm not going to waste more of your time than I can help. It's just a little matter of business that I want to put before you." Isaacstein looked at him attentively for a minute or two out of his black, beady eyes. "Of his car," he said unexpectedly, holding out an open box. "Thank you," said Anthony. "I don't mind if I do." He helped himself. "It's about this Czechoslovakian business," continued Anthony as he accepted a match. He noted the momentary flicking of the other's steady gaze. "The murder of Prince Michael must have rather upset the apple cart." Mr. Isaacstein raised one eyebrow, murmured, "Huh?" interrogatively, and transferred his gaze to the ceiling. "Oil," said Anthony, thoughtfully surveying the polished surface of the desk. "Wonderful thing, oil." He felt the slight start the financier gave. "Do you mind coming to the point, Mr. Cade?" "Not at all. I imagine, Mr. Isaacstein, that if those oil concessions are granted to another company, you won't be exactly pleased about it." "What's the proposition?" asked the other, looking straight at him. "A suitable claimant to the throne, full of pro-British sympathies." "Where have you got him?" "That's my business." Isaacstein acknowledged the retort by a slight smile. His glance had grown hard and keen. "The genuine article? I can't stand for any funny business." "The absolute genuine article." "Straight?" "Straight." "I'll take your word for it." "You don't seem to take much convincing," said Anthony, looking curiously at him. Herman Isaacstein smiled. "I shouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't learnt to know whether a man is speaking the truth or not," he replied simply. "What terms do you want?" "Same loan, on the same conditions that you offered to Prince Michael." "What about yourself?" "For the moment, nothing, except that I want you to come down to Chimneys tonight." "No," said Isaacstein with some decision. "I can't do that." "Why?" "Dining out. Rather an important dinner." "All the same, I'm afraid you'll have to cut it out, for your own sake." "What do you mean?" Anthony looked at him for a full minute before he said slowly, "Do you know that they've found the revolver, the one Michael was shot with? Do you know where they found it? In your suitcase." "What?" Isaacstein almost leapt from his chair. His face was frenzied. "What are you saying? What do you mean?" "I'll tell you." Very obligingly, Anthony narrated the occurrences in connection with the finding of the revolver. As he spoke, the other's face assumed a grayish tinge of absolute terror. "But it's false!" he screamed out as Anthony finished. "I never put it there. I know nothing about it. This is a plot." "Don't excite yourself," said Anthony soothingly. "If that's the case, you'll easily be able to prove it." "Prove it? How can I prove it?" "If I were you," said Anthony gently, "I'd come to Chimneys tonight." Eisenstein looked at him doubtfully. "You advise it?" Anthony leaned forward and whispered to him. The financier fell back in amazement, staring at him. "You actually mean—" "Come and see," said Anthony. Ooh, so interested. I wonder what he's setting up. Chapter 27. The 13th of October, continued. The clock in the council chamber struck 9. "Well," said Lord Caterham with a deep sigh, "here they all are, just like little Bo-Peep's flock, back again and wagging their tails behind them." He looked sadly round the room. "Organ grinder, complete with monkey," he murmured, fixing the Baron with his eye. "Nosy Parker of Throgmorton Street." "I think you'd rather unkind to the Baron," protested Bundle, to whom these confidences were being poured out. "He told me that he considered you the perfect example of English hospitality among the haute noblesse." "I dare say," said Lord Caterham. "He's always saying things like that. It makes him most fatiguing to talk to. But I can tell you I'm not nearly as much of the hospitable English gentleman as I was. As soon as I can, I shall let Chimneys to the enterprising American and go and live in a hotel. There, if anyone worries you, you can just ask for your bill and go." "Cheer up," said Bundle. "We seem to have lost Mr. Fish for good." "I always found him rather amusing," said Lord Caterham, who was in a contradictory temper. "Oh, hello. Oh, thank you so much for the follow. I'll do a quick introduction since I just started the chapter. Thank you for the follow. I am Sunny, and I do primarily story times. Oh, and hi, Pito. How are you doing? Thank you so much for the follow. Good to see you both. Let me put up my socials for you. Let me access first my keyboard. So I put up all my socials on Twitter and Discord, when I'm going to be doing streaming. This month it's going to be Fridays and Sundays. And I haven't decided yet on what I'm going to read when we're finished with Chimneys, which we're going to be finishing today. And then I also have all of my... what's the favor? It depends, of course. And all of my story times I put up on YouTube, and they are in playlist form, so you don't... Oh, let me put up Maestro here. Maestro is my kitty boy right here. I'm not sure. I could try. Let's see. Pepito on the beat, like that. So yes, that's where I put my story times up on, and this is a little introduction to my cats too. Oh, you're welcome. I'm assuming you are, okay, you're welcome. I'm assuming you're both here hanging out together. And I'm just taking a little time to do the introductions, and I'm going to get back to it if that's all right. So Maestro right here, by the way, I have him up when I am doing, chatting between chapters, a before and after story time. And then when he disappears, people know, if they're watching on the VODs and the YouTubes, they'll know that I am reading the story. So there you go. So we're going to hide him and continue. "I always found him rather amusing," said Lord Caterham, who was in a contradictory temper. "It's that precious young man of yours who has let me in for this. Why should I have this board meeting called in my house? Why doesn't he rent? I am reading The Secret of Chimneys, Agatha Christie. It is her most recent release into the public domain. I only read public domain books. That basically means that they've been out for about 9,500 or so or more years, and their copyright has expired. So this is actually the conclusion of The Secret of Chimneys, and if you wanted to listen to any of the previous, like you can start from chapter 1, those are all up on my YouTube, and they are in playlist form, so you don't have to worry about finding the next one. You just press play and go. I just need to update it. Yeah. And we are in the thick of things. Why should I have this board meeting called in my house? Why doesn't he rent the Larchers or Elmhurst or some nice villa residence like that at Streatham and hold his company meetings there? Wrong atmosphere, said Bundle. No one is going to play any tricks on us, I hope, said her father nervously. I don't trust that French fellow Lemoine. French police are up to all sorts of dodges. Put India rubber bands round your arm and then construct the crime and make you jump, and it's the register on a thermometer. I know that when they call out, "Who killed Prince Michael?" I shall register 122 or something perfectly frightful, and they'll haul me off to jail at once. The door opened and Treadwell announced, Mr. George Lomax, Mr. Eversley. Enter Cotters, followed by Faithful Dog, murmured Bundle. Bill made a beeline for her, whilst George greeted Lord Caterham in the genial manner he assumed for public occasions. My dear Caterham, said George, shaking him by the hand, I got your message and came over, of course. Very good of you, my dear fellow, very good of you. Delighted to see you, said Lord Caterham. Lord Caterham's conscience always drove him on to an excess of geniality when he was conscious of feeling none. Not that it was my message, but that doesn't matter at all. In the meantime, Bill was attacking Bundle in an undertone. I say, what's it all about? What's this I hear about Virginia bolting off in the middle of the night? She's not been kidnapped, has she? Oh, no, said Bundle. She left a note pinned to the pincushion in the orthodox fashion. She's not gone off with anyone, has she? With that colonial Johnny. Never liked that fellow, and from all I hear, there seems to be an idea floating around that he himself is the super crook. But I don't quite see how that can be. Why not? Well, this King Victor was a French fellow, and Cade's English enough. You don't happen to have heard that King Victor was an accomplished linguist, and moreover was half Irish? Oh, Lord! Then that's why he's made himself scarce, is it? I don't know about his making himself scarce. He disappeared the day before yesterday, as you know, but this morning we got a wire from him saying that he would be down here at 9 p.m. tonight. Suggested the Cotters should be asked over. All these other people have turned up as well, asked by Mr. Cade. It is a gathering, said Bill, looking round. One French detective by window, one English ditto by fireplace, strong foreign element. Stars and Stripes doesn't seem to be represented. Bundle shook her head. Mr. Fish has disappeared into the blue. Virginia's not here either. But everyone else is assembled, and I have a feeling in my bones, Bill, that we are drawing very near to the moment when somebody says, James, the footman, and everything is revealed. We're only waiting now for Anthony Cade to arrive. He'll never show up, said Bill. And why call this company meeting, as father calls it? That's some deep idea behind it. Depend upon it. Wants us all here, while he's somewhere else. You know the sort of thing. You don't think he'll come, then? No fear. Run his head into the lion's mouth? Why, the room's bristling with detectives and high officials. You don't know much about King Victor, if you think that he would deter you. By all accounts, it's the kind of situation he loves above all, and he always manages to come out on top. Mr. Eversley shook his head doubtfully. That would take some doing, with the dice loaded against him. He'll never— The door opened again, and Treadwell announced, "Mr. Cade." Anthony came straight across to the host. "Lord Caterham," he said, "I'm giving you a frightful lot of trouble, and I'm awfully sorry about it, but I really do think that tonight we'll see the clearing up of the mystery." Lord Caterham looked mollified. He had always had a secret liking for Anthony. "No trouble at all," he said heartily. "That's very kind of you," said Anthony. "We're all here, I see. Then I can get on with the good work." "I don't understand," said George Lomax weightily. "I don't understand in the least. It was all very irregular. Mr. Cade has no standing whatever. The position is a very difficult and delicate one. I am strongly of the opinion—" George's flood of eloquence was arrested. Moving unobtrusively to the great man's side, Superintendent Battle whispered a few words in his ear. George looked perplexed and baffled. "Very well, if you say so," he remarked grudgingly. Then added in a louder tone, "I'm sure we are all willing to listen to what Mr. Cade has to say." Anthony ignored the palpable condescension of the other's tone. "It's just a little idea of mine, that's all," he said cheerfully. "Probably all of you know that we got hold of a certain message in cipher the other day. There was a reference to Richmond and some numbers." He paused. "Well, we had a shot at solving it, and we failed. Now, in the late Count Stillitch's memoirs, which I happen to have read, there is a reference to a certain dinner, a flower dinner, which everyone attended wearing a badge representing a flower. The Count himself wore the exact duplicate of that curious device we found in the cavity of the secret passage. It represented a rose. If you remember, it was all rows, R-O-W-S, of things, buttons, letter E's, and finally rows of knitting. Now, gentlemen, what is there in this house that is arranged in rows? Books, isn't that so? Add to that in the catalogue of Lord Caterham's library there is a book called The Life of the Earl of Richmond, and I think you will get a very fair idea of the hiding place. Starting at the volume in question and using the numbers to denote shelves and books, I think you will find that the object in our search is concealed in a dummy book, or in the cavity behind a particular book." Anthony looked round modestly, obviously waiting for applause. "On my word, that's very ingenious," said Lord Caterham. "Quite ingenious," admitted George condescendingly. "But it remains to be seen," Anthony laughed. "The proof of the pudding's in the eating, eh? Well, I'll soon settle that for you." He sprang to his feet. "I'll go to the library." He got no further. Monsieur Lemoine moved forward from the window. "Just one moment, Mr. Cade. You permit, Lord Caterham?" He went to the writing table and hurriedly scribbled a few lines. He sealed them up in an envelope, and then rang the bell. Treadwell appeared in answer to it. Lemoine handed him the note. "See that that is delivered at once, if you please." "Very good, sir," said Treadwell. With his usual dignified tread, he withdrew. Anthony, who had been standing irresolute, sat down again. "What's the big idea, Lemoine?" he asked gently. There was a sudden sense of strain in the atmosphere. "If the jewel is where you say it is, well, it has been there for over 7 years. A quarter of an hour more does not matter." "Go on," said Anthony. "That wasn't all you wanted to say." "No, it wasn't. At this juncture it is unwise to permit anyone to leave the room, especially if that person has rather questionable antecedents." Anthony raised his eyebrows and lighted a cigarette. "I suppose a vagabond life is not very respectable," he mused. 2 months ago, Mr. Cade, you were in South Africa. That is admitted. Where were you before that?" Anthony leaned back in his chair, idly blowing smoke rings. Canada? Wild Northwest? Are you sure you are not in prison? French prison? Automatically, Superintendent Battle moved a step nearer the door, as if to cut off a retreat that way, but Anthony showed no signs of doing anything dramatic. Instead, he stared at the French detective, and then burst out laughing. My poor Lemoine, it is a monomania with you. You do indeed see King Victor everywhere. Do you fancy that I am that interesting gentleman? Do you deny it? Anthony brushed a fleck of ash from his coat sleeve. I never deny anything that amuses me, he said slightly. The accusation is really too ridiculous. Oh, you think so? The Frenchman leaned forward. His face was twitching painfully, and yet he seemed perplexed and baffled, as though something in Anthony's manner puzzled him. But if I tell you, monsieur, that this time, I am out to get King Victor, and nothing shall stop me. Very laudable, was Anthony's comment. You've been out to get him before, though, haven't you, Lemoine? And he's got the better of you. Aren't you afraid that that may happen again? He's a slippery fellow, by all accounts. The conversation had developed into a duel between the detective and Anthony. Everyone else in the room was conscious of the tension. It was a fight to a finish between the Frenchman, painfully in earnest, and the man who smoked so calmly, and whose words seemed to show that he had not a care in the world. If I were you, Lemoine, continued Anthony, I should be very, very careful. Watch your step, and all that sort of thing. This time, said Lemoine grimly, there will be no mistake. You seem very sure about it all, said Anthony, but there's such a thing as evidence, you know. Lemoine smiled, and something in his smile seemed to attract Anthony's attention. He sat up and stubbed out his cigarette. You saw that note I wrote just now? Said the French detective. It was to my people at the inn. Yesterday I received from France the fingerprints of the Bertillon measurement of French Victor, so-called Captain O'Neill. I have asked for them to be sent up to me here. In a few minutes we shall know whether you are the man. Anthony stared steadily at him. Then a little smile crept over his face. You're really rather clever, Lemoine. I never thought of that. The documents will arrive. You will induce me to dip my fingers in the ink or something equally unpleasant, and you will measure my ears and look for many distinguishing marks, and if they agree, well, said Lemoine, if they agree, eh? Anthony leaned forward in the chair. And if they do agree, he said very gently, what then? What then? The detective seemed taken aback. But I shall have proved that you are King Victor. For the first time, a shade of uncertainty crept into his manner. That will doubtless be a great satisfaction to you, said Anthony. But I don't quite see where it's going to hurt me. I'm not admitting anything, just supposing, just for the sake of argument, that I was King Victor. I might be trying to repent, you know. Repent? So that's the idea. Put yourself in King Victor's place, Lemoine. Use your imagination. You've just come out of prison. You're getting on in life. You've lost the first fine rapture of the adventurous life. Say even that you meet a beautiful girl. You think of marrying and settling down somewhere in the country where you can grow vegetable marrows. You decide from henceforth to lead a blameless life. Put yourself in King Victor's place. Can't you imagine feeling like that? I do not think that I should feel like that, said Lemoine with a sardonic smile. Perhaps you wouldn't, admitted Anthony. But then you're not King Victor, are you? You can't possibly know what he feels like. But it is nonsense what you are saying there, sputtered the Frenchman. Oh, no, it isn't. Come now, Lemoine. If I'm King Victor, what have you against me, after all? You could never get the necessary evidence in the old days, remember. I've served my sentence, and that's all there is to it. As suppose you could arrest me for the French equivalent of loitering with intent to commit a felony, but that would be poor satisfaction, wouldn't it? Hey, Noel, how are you doing? You forget, said Lemoine. America. How about this business of obtaining money under the false pretenses and passing yourself off as Prince Nicholas Obolovitch? No good, Lemoine, said Anthony. I was nowhere near America at the time. I can prove that easily enough. King Victor impersonated Prince Nicholas in America. Then I am not King Victor. You're sure he was impersonated? That it wasn't the man himself? Superintendent Battle suddenly interposed. The man was an impostor, all right, Mr. Cade. I wouldn't contradict you, Battle, said Anthony. You have such a habit of being always right. Are you equally sure that Prince Nicholas died in the Congo? Battle looked at him curiously. I wouldn't swear to that, sir. But it's generally believed. Careful, man. That's your motto. Plenty of rope, eh? I've taken a leaf out of your book. I've given Monsieur Lemoine plenty of rope. I've not denied his accusations, but all the same, I'm afraid he's going to be disappointed. You see, I always believe in having something up one's sleeves. Anticipating that some little unpleasantness might arise there, I took the precaution to bring a trump card along with me. He, is upstairs. Upstairs? Said Lord Caterham, very interested. Yes, he's been having rather a trying time of it lately, poor fellow. Got a nasty bump on the head from someone. I've been looking after him. Suddenly the deep voice of Mr. Isaacstein broke in. Can we guess who he is? Well, if you like, said Anthony, but Lemoine interrupted with sudden ferocity. All this is foolery. You think to outwit me yet again. That may be true what you say, that you are not in America. You were too clever to say that if it were not true. But there is something else. Murder. Yes, murder. Murder of Prince Michael. He interfered with you that night as you were looking for the jewel. Lemoine, have you ever known King Victor to murder? Anthony's voice rang out sharply. You know as well, better than I do, that he has never shed blood. Who else but you could have murdered him? Cried Lemoine. Tell me that! The last word died on his lips as a shrill whistle sounded from the terrace outside. Anthony sprang up, all of his assumed nonchalance laid aside. You ask me who murdered Prince Michael, he cried. I won't tell you. I'll show you. That whistle was the signal I've been waiting for. The murder of Prince Michael is in the library. Now! He sprang out through the window, and the other followers... and the others followed him as he led the way round the terrace until he came to the library window. He pushed the window, and it yielded to his touch. Very softly, he held aside the thick curtain so that they could look into the room. Standing by the bookcase was a dark figure, hurriedly pulling out and replacing volumes, so absorbed in the task that no outside sound was heeded. And then, as they stood watching, trying to recognize the figure that was vaguely silhouetted against the light of the electric torch it carried, someone sprang past them with a sound like a roar of a wild beast. The torch fell to the ground, was extinguished, and the sounds of a terrific struggle filled the room. Lord Caterham groped his way to the lights and switched them on. Two figures were swaying together, and as they looked, the end came. The short, sharp crack of a pistol shot, and the small figure crumpled up and fell. The other figure turned and faced them. It was Boris, his eyes alight with rage. She killed my master, he growled. Now she tries to shoot me. I would have taken the pistol from her and shot her, but it went off in the struggle. St. Michael directed it. The evil woman is dead. A woman? Cried George Lomax. They drew nearer. On the floor, the pistol still clasped in her hand, and an expression of deadly malignity. On her face lay Mademoiselle Brune. So many twists and turns. Chapter 28, King Victor. I suspected her from the first, explained Anthony. There was a light in her room on the night of the murder. Afterwards, I wavered. I made inquiries about her in Brittany and came back satisfied that she was what she represented herself to be. I was a fool. Because the Comtesse de Breteuil had employed a Mademoiselle Brune and spoke highly of her, but never occurred to me that the real Mademoiselle Brune might have been kidnapped on her way to her new post, and that it might be a substitute taking her place. Instead, I shifted my suspicions to Mr. Fish. It was not until he had followed me to Dover, and we had had a mutual explanation, that I began to see clearly. Once I knew that he was a Pinkerton's man, trailing King Victor, my suspicions swung back again to their original object. The thing that worried me most was that Mrs. Revel had definitely recognized the woman. Then I remembered that it was only after I had mentioned her being Madame de Breteuil's governess, and all she had said was that accounted for the fact that the woman's face was familiar to her. Superintendent Battle will tell you that a deliberate plot was formed to keep Mrs. Revel from coming to Chimneys. Nothing more nor less than a dead body, in fact. No, the murder was the work of the comrades of the Red Hand, punishing supposed treachery on the part of the victim, the staging of it, and the absence of the comrade's sign manual, pointed to some abler intelligence directing operations. From the first, I suspected some connection with Czechoslovakia. Mrs. Revel was the only member of the house party who had been to the country. I suspected that at first that someone was impersonating Prince Michael, but that proved to be a totally erroneous idea. When I realized the possibility of Mademoiselle Brune's being an impostor, and added to that the fact that her face was similar to Mrs. Revel's, I began to see daylight. It was evidently very important that she should not be recognized, and Mrs. Revel was the only person likely to do so. "But who was she?" said Lord Caterham. "Someone Mrs. Revel had known in Czechoslovakia?" "I think the Baron might be able to tell us," said Anthony. "Aye." The Baron stared at him, then down at the motionless figure. "Look well," said Anthony. "Don't be put off by the make-up. She was an actress once, remember." The Baron stared again. Suddenly he started. "God in heaven," he breathed. "It's not possible." "What is not possible?" asked George. "Who is the lady? You recognize her, Baron?" No, it's not possible." The Baron continued to mutter. "She was killed. They were both killed on the steps of the palace. Her body was recovered." "Mutilated and unrecognizable," Anthony reminded him. "She managed to put up a bluff. I think she escaped to America and has spent a good many years lying low in deadly terror of the comrades of the Red Hand. They promoted the revolution, remember, and to use an expressive phrase, they always had it in for her. Then King Victor was released, and they planned to recover the diamond together. She was searching for it that night when she came suddenly upon Prince Michael, and he recognized her. There was never much fear for her meeting him in the ordinary way of things. Royal guests don't come in contact with governesses, and she could always retire with a convenient migraine, as she did the day the Baron was here. However, she met Prince Michael face to face when she least expected it. Exposure and disgrace stared at her in the face. She shot him. It was she who placed the revolver in Eisenstein's suitcase so as to confuse the trail, and she who returned the letters. Then one moved forward. "She was coming down to search for the jewels that night, you say," he said. "Might she not have been going to meet her accomplice, King Victor, who was coming from outside? Eh? What do you say to that?" Anthony sighed. "Still at it, my dear Lemoine. How persistent you are. You won't take my hint that I've got a trump card up my sleeve?" But George, whose mind worked slowly, now broke in. "I am still completely at sea. Who is this lady, Baron? You recognized her, it seems?" But the Baron drew himself up and stood very straight and stiff. "You're in error, Mr. Lomax. To my knowledge, I have not this lady seen before. A complete stranger she is to me. But—" George stared at him, bewildered. The Baron took him into the corner of the room and murmured something in his ear. Anthony watched with a good deal of enjoyment, George's face turning slowly purple, his eyes bulging, and all the incipient symptoms of apoplexy. A murmur of George's throaty voice came to him. Certainly, by all means. No need at all. Complete situation. Complicated situation. Utmost discretion. Ah! Lemoine hit the table sharply with his hand. I do not care about all this. The murder of Prince Michael, that was not my affair. I want King Victor. Anthony shook his head gently. I am sorry for you, Lemoine. You're really a very able fellow, but all the same you're going to lose the trick. I'm about to play my trump card. He stepped across the room. Hey, Puma, good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. How have you been? I will reply at the end of the chapter. We're almost there. He stepped across the room and rang the bell. Treadwell answered it. A gentleman arrived with me this evening, Treadwell. Yes, sir, a foreign gentleman. Quite so. Will you kindly ask him to join us here as soon as possible? Yes, sir. Treadwell withdrew. Entry of the trump card, the mysterious Monsieur X, remarked Anthony. Who is he? Can anyone guess? Putting two and two together, said Hermann Eisenstein, what with your mysterious hints this morning and your attitude this afternoon, I should say there was no doubt about it. Somehow or other you've managed to get hold of Prince Nicholas of Czechoslovakia. You think the same, Baron? I do, unless yet another impostor you have put forward, but that I will not believe. With me your dealings most honorable have been. Thank you, Baron. I shan't forget those words. So you are all agreed? His eyes swept round the circle of waiting faces. Only Lemoine did not respond, but kept his eyes fixed sullenly on the table. Anthony's quick ears had caught the sound of footsteps outside the hall. And yet, you know, he said with a queer smile, you're all wrong. He crossed swiftly to the door and flung it open. A man stood on the threshold, a man with a neat black beard, eyeglasses, and a foppish appearance, slightly marred by a bandage round the head. Allow me to represent to you the real Monsieur Lemoine of the Sûreté. There was a rush and a scuffle, and then the nasal tones of Mr. Hiram Fish rose bland and reassuring from the window. No, you don't, Sonny, not this way. I have been stationed here this whole evening for the particular purpose of preventing your escape. You will observe that I have you covered well and good with this gun of mine. I came over to get you, and I've got you. But you sure are some lad. Putting up Maestro. Well, you've been moving. Yeah, oh man, I definitely know how busy moving can be. Are you all set now? All moved and everything? I still haven't tried that recipe that you put up in my Discord. I really need to, because it sounds so delicious. Yeah. I still have I've lived here for 7 years. I still have a few boxes that haven't been unpacked, but they're like books and stuff that I don't read often, but I still want to keep with me. Yeah. Well, I hope that you've been... Oh, another batch today. Yeah, sometimes it can take quite a while. Well, I hope that you're not stressing yourself out too much, that you're taking lots of nice breaks. Important to do when moving. Of course, it's lucky when we do get to have like the leisure of taking a long time to move. I never could quite figure out how people could like move everything out of their place and then move it all in one go to another place, like especially if it's across country. Are you moving far? Or did you move far, I guess I should say. Oh, yes. It's good that you have them. Well, 5 hours isn't bad considering. At least it's not like 5-hour flight, just a 5-hour drive. Still, that's quite a drive to make. Is it 5 hours one way or both ways? Oh, okay. Nice. I don't remember. Do you have any pets? Or are you going to get any pets? I'm assuming one way. Oh, yeah. So 10 hours both ways is, yeah, full round trip. Oh, that is quite a drive. Oh, okay. Nice. Dogs, I think, are easier to move. Cats, they do not like it. Although I actually had my first cat, Walkie, which I have a few pictures of her on my Discord. She was fine with being in the car as long as she didn't have to be in the carrier. Oh, Bear the Fluff. Oh my gosh. I have to see if you posted up pictures. I would love to see more pictures. What kind of big floof? I do love that name, by the way. But yeah, I moved with Walkie a couple of times, and she was older, so she could chill out pretty well. So as long as she wasn't in the carrier, she'd just like climb up on the mountain or stuff that I had in the back of my car and just chill out there. Half black chow chow. Black lab chow chow. Oh, that sounds so fun. My mom has a half black lab, half corgi. I call him a corgidor or a labrador because he's lap size and he's so cute. Yes, I would love to see some pictures. But let's chat more later. I would love to hear more about it. But let's continue with Chimneys because we are so close to the end. Oh, yeah. This is a good idea. Okay. Chapter 29. Further explanations. You owe us an explanation, I think, Mr. Cade, said Hiram Isaacstein, somewhat later in the evening. There's nothing much else to explain, said Anthony modestly. I went to Dover, and Fish followed me under the impression that I was King Victor. We found a mysterious stranger imprisoned there, and as soon as we heard his story, we knew where we were. Same idea again, you see. The real man kidnapped, and the false one, in this case King Victor himself, takes his place. But it seems that Battle here always thought there was something fishy about this French colleague, and wired to Paris for his fingerprints and other means of identification. Ah, cried the Baron, fingerprints! The Bertillon measurements that scoundrel talked about? It was a very clever idea, said Anthony. I admired it so much that I felt forced to play it up. Besides, my doing so puzzled the false Lemoine enormously. You see, as soon as I had given the tip about the rose and where the jewel really was, he was keen to pass on the news to his accomplice, and at the same time to keep us all in that room. The note was really to Mademoiselle Brune. He told Treadwell to deliver it at once, and Treadwell did so by taking it upstairs to the schoolroom. Lemoine accused me of being King Victor, by that means creating a diversion and preventing anyone from leaving the room. By the time all that had been cleared up, and we had joined to the library to look for the stone, he flattered himself that the stone would be no longer there to find. George cleared his throat. "I must say, Mr. Cade," he said pompously, "that I consider your action in that matter highly reprehensible. If the slightest hitch had occurred in your plans, one of our national possessions might have disappeared beyond the hope of recovery. It was foolhardy, Mr. Cade, reprehensibly foolhardy." "I guess you haven't tumbled to the little idea, Mr. Lomax," said the drawling voice of Mr. Fish, "that historic diamond was never behind the books in the library." "Never? Not on your life. You see," explained Anthony, "that little device of Count Stiltditch's stood for what it had originally stood for, a rose. Then that dawned upon me. On Monday afternoon I went straight to the rose garden. Mr. Fish had already tumbled to the same idea. If, standing with your back to the sundial, you took 7 paces straight forward, then 8 to the left and 3 to the right, you come to some bushes of a bright red rose called Richmond. The house had been ransacked to find a hiding place, but nobody was thought of digging in the garden. I suggested a little digging party tomorrow morning. And the story about the books in the library, an invention of mine to trap the lady. Mr. Fish kept watch on the terrace, and whistled when the psychological moment had arrived. I may say that Mr. Fish and I established martial law at the Dover House, and prevented the comrades from communicating with the false Lemoine. He sent them an order to clear out, and word was conveyed to him that this had been done. So we went happily ahead with his plans for denouncing me." "Well, well," said Lord Cattern cheerfully, "everything seems to have been cleared up most satisfactorily." "Everything but one thing," said Mr. Isaacstein. "What's that?" The great financier looked steadily at Anthony. "What did you get me down here for? Just to assist at a dramatic scene as an interested onlooker?" Anthony shook his head. "No, Mr. Isaacstein, you are a busy man whose time is money. Why did you come down here originally? To negotiate a loan. With whom?" "Prince Michael of Herzoslovakia." "Exactly. Prince Michael is dead. Are you prepared to offer the same loan on the same terms to his cousin Nicholas?" "Can you produce him? I thought he was killed in the Congo." "Well, he was killed all right. I killed him." "Oh, no, I'm not a murderer. When I say I killed him, I mean that I spread the report of his death. I promise you a prince, Mr. Isaacstein. Will I do?" "You?" "Yes, I'm the man. Nicholas Sergius Alexander Ferdinand Obolovich. Rather long for the kind of life I propose to live. So I emerged from the Congo as plain old Anthony Cade." Little Captain Andrassy sprang up. "But this is incredible," he sputtered. "Incredible. Have a care, sir, what you say." "I can give you plenty of proofs," said Anthony quietly. "I think I shall be able to convince the Baron here." The Baron lifted his hand. "The proofs I will examine, sir, but of them, for me, there is no need. Your word alone sufficient to me is. Besides, your English mother you much resemble. All along have I said, this young man on one side or the other, most highly born is." "You have always trusted my word, Baron," said Anthony. "I can assure you that in the days to come I shall not forget." Then he looked over at Superintendent Battle, whose face had remained perfectly expressionless. "You can understand," said Anthony with a smile, "that my position has been extremely precarious. Of all of those in the house, I must be supposed to have the best reason for wishing Michael Obolovich out of the way, since I was the next heir to the throne. Been extraordinarily afraid of Battle all along. I always felt that he suspected me, but that he was held up by lack of motive." I never believed for a minute that you'd shot him, sir, said Superintendent Battle. You've got a feeling in such matters, but I knew that you were afraid of something, and you puzzled me. If I'd known sooner who you really were, I dare say I'd have yielded to the evidence and arrested you. I'm glad I managed to keep my guilty secret from you. You wormed everything else out of me, all right. You're a damned good man at your job, Battle. I shall always think of Scotland Yard with respect. Most amazing, muttered George. Most amazing story I ever heard. I can really hardly believe it. You are quite sure, Baron, that— My dear Mr. Lomax, said Anthony, with a slight hardness in his tone, I have no intention of asking the British Foreign Office to support my claim without bringing forward the most convincing documentary evidence. I suggest that we adjourn now, and that you, the Baron, Mr. Isaacstein, and myself discuss the terms of the proposed loan. The Baron rose to his feet and clicked his heels together. It will be the proudest moment of my life, sir, he said solemnly, when I see you King of Czechoslovakia. Oh, by the way, said Anthony carelessly, slipping his hand through the other's arm, I forgot to tell you, there's a string tied to it. I'm married, you know. The Baron retreated a step or two. Dismay overspread his countenance. Something wrong I knew there would be, he boomed. Merciful God in heaven! He's married a black woman in Africa. Come, come, said Anthony laughingly. Good. Sorry, skipping over some parts. She's to play king to my queen. It's no use shaking your head. She's fully qualified for the post. She's the daughter of an English peer who dates back to the time of the Conqueror. It's very fashionable just now for royalties to marry into the aristocracy, and she knows something of her Slovakia. Oh, my God! Cried George Lomax, startled out of his usual careful speech. Not Virginia Revell? Yes, said Anthony. Virginia Revell. My dear fellow, cried Lord Caterham, I mean, sir, I congratulate you. I do indeed. A delightful creature. Thank you, Lord Caterham, said Anthony. She's all you say and more. But Isaacstein was regarding him curiously. You'll excuse my asking, Your Highness, but when did this marriage take place? Anthony smiled back at him. As a matter of fact, he said, I married her this morning. That was a fun little turn. Chapter 30. Anthony signs on for a new job. If you will go on, gentlemen, I will follow you in a minute, said Anthony. He waited while the others filed out, and then turned to where Superintendent Battle was standing apparently absorbed in examining the paneling. Well, Battle, want to ask me something, don't you? Well, I do, sir, though I don't know how you knew I did. But I always marked you out as being specially quick in the uptake. I take it that the lady who is dead was the late Queen Varaga? Quite right, Battle. It's all hushed up, I hope. You can understand that I feel what I feel about family skeletons. Trust Mr. Lomax for that, sir. No one will ever know. That is, a lot of people will know, but it won't get about. Was that what you wanted to ask me about? No, sir, that was only in passing. I was curious to know just what made you drop your own name, if I'm not taking too much of liberty. Well, not a bit of it. I'll tell you. I killed myself for the purest motives, Battle. My mother was English. I've been educated in England, and I was far more interested in England than in Czechoslovakia. And I felt an absolute fool knocking about the world with a comic opera title tacked on to me. You see, when I was very young, I had democratic ideas, believed in the purity of ideals, and the equality of all men. I especially disbelieved in kings and princes. And since then? Asked Battle shrewdly. Well, since then I've traveled and seen the world. There's damned little equality going about. Mind you, I still believe in democracy, but you've got to force it on people with a strong hand, ram it down their throats. Men don't like to be brothers. They may some day, but they don't now. My belief in the brotherhood of man died the day I arrived in London last week, when I observed people standing in a tube train resolutely refuse to move up and make room for those who entered. You won't turn people into angels by appealing to their better natures just yet awhile, but by judicious force you can coerce them into behaving more or less decently to one another to go on with it. I still believe in the brotherhood of man, but I'm not coming yet a while. But it's not coming yet a while. Say another 10,000 years or so. It's no good being impatient. Evolution is a slow process. I'm very interested in these views of yours, sir, said Battle with a twinkle. And if you'll allow me to say so, I'm sure you'll make a very fine king out there. Thank you, Battle, said Anthony with a sigh. You don't seem happy about it, sir. I don't know. I dare say it will be rather fun, but it's tying oneself down to regular work. I've always avoided that before. But you consider it your duty, I suppose, sir? Oh, good Lord, no! What an idea! It's a woman. It's always a woman, Battle. I'd do more than be a king for her sake. Quite so, sir. I've arranged it so that the Baron and Isaacstein can't kick. The one wants a king, the other wants oil. They'll both get what they want, and I've got... Oh, Lord, Battle, have you ever been in love? I am much attached to Mrs. Battle, sir. Much attached to Mrs. Oh, you don't know what I'm talking about. It's entirely different. Excuse me, sir, that man of yours is waiting outside the window. Boris? So he is. He's a wonderful fellow. It's a mercy that pistol went off in the struggle and killed the lady. Otherwise Boris would have wrung her neck as sure as fate, and then you would have wanted to hang him. His attachment to the Yabelovich dynasty is remarkable. The queer thing was that as soon as Michael was dead, he attached himself to me, and yet he couldn't possibly have known who I really was. Instinct, said Battle. Very awkward instinct, I thought it at the time. I was afraid it might give the show away to you. I suppose I'd better see what he wants. He went out through the window. Superintendent Battle, left alone, looked after him for a minute, then apparently addressed the paneling. He'll do, said Superintendent Battle. Outside, Boris explained himself. Master, he said, and led the way along the terrace. Anthony followed him, wondering what was forward. Presently Boris stopped and pointed with his forefinger. It was moonlight, and in front of them was a stone set on... Oh, hi, thank you so much for the host, UK. How are you doing? Hope you've had a good weekend, and I hope you're having a good morning. I'm getting near the end. We're not quite there. Presently Boris stopped and pointed with his forefinger. It was moonlight, and in front of them was a stone set in which sat two figures. He is a dog, said Anthony to himself, and what's more, a pointer. He strode forward. Boris melted into the shadows. The two figures rose to meet him. One of them was Virginia, the other. Hello, Joe, said a well-remembered voice. Is a great girl of yours? Jimmy McGrath, about all that's wonderful, cried Anthony. How in the name of fortune did you get here? Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is one of my favorites. And thank you so much for the bits. All right. Yeah, good place to lurk. And enjoy your breakfast. That trip of mine into the interior went put. Then some people came monkeying around, wanted to buy that manuscript off me. Next thing, I was near as nothing got a knife in the back one night. That made me think that I'd handled you, that I'd handed out, oh, sorry. That made me think that I'd handed you out a bigger job than I knew. Thought you might need help, and I came along after you by the very next boat. Wasn't it splendid of him? Said Virginia. She squeezed Jimmy's arms. He didn't ever tell me how frightfully nice he was. Oh, why didn't you ever tell me how frightfully nice he was? You are, Jimmy. You're a perfect dear. You two seem to be getting along all right," said Anthony. "Sure thing," said Jimmy. "I was snooping round for news of you, and I connected with this dame. She wasn't at all what I thought she'd be, some swell, haughty society lady that'd scare the life out of me." "He told me all about the letters," said Virginia, "and I felt almost ashamed not to have been in real trouble over them when he was such a knight-errant." "If I'd known what you were like," said Jim gallantly, "I'd not have given him the letters. I'd have brought them to you myself. Say, young man, is the fun really over? Is there nothing for me to do?" "By Jove," said Anthony, "there is. Wait a minute." He disappeared into the house. In a minute or two he returned with a paper package, which he cast into Jimmy's arms. "Go round to the garage and help yourself to a likely-looking car. Beat it to London and deliver that parcel to 17 Everdeen Square. That's Mr. Balderson's private address. In exchange, he'll hand you £1,000. "What? It's not the memoirs. I understand they'd been burnt." "What do you take me for?" demanded Anthony. "You don't think I'd fall for a story like that, do you? I rang up the publishers at once, found out that the other was a fake call, and arranged accordingly. I made up a dummy package that I've been directed to do, but I put the real package in the manager's safe and handed over the dummy. The memoirs have never been out of my possession." "Oh, bully for you, son," said Jimmy. "Oh, Anthony," said Virginia, "you're not going to let them be published?" "I can't help myself. I can't let a pal like Jimmy down, but you needn't worry. I've had time to wade through them, and I see now why people always hint that bigwigs don't write their own reminiscences, but hire someone to do it for them. As a writer, Stoketich is an insufferable bore. He proses on about statecraft and doesn't go in for any racy and indiscreet anecdotes. His ruling passion is of secrecy. He held strong to the end. There's not a word in the memoirs from beginning to end to flutter the susceptibilities of the most difficult politician. I rang up Balderson today and arranged with him that I'd deliver the manuscript tonight before midnight. But Jimmy can do his own dirty work now that he's here." "Well, I'm off," said Jimmy. "I like the idea of that £1,000, especially when I'd made up my mind it was down and out." "Oh, half a second," said Anthony. "I've got a confession to make to you, Virginia. Something that everyone else knows, but that I haven't told you yet." "I don't mind how many strange women you've loved so long as you don't tell me about them." "Women?" said Anthony with a virtuous air. "Women indeed! You asked James here what kind of women I was going about with the last time he saw me." "Frumps," said Jimmy solemnly. "Utter frumps. Not a day under 45. "Thank you, Jimmy," said Anthony. "You're a true friend. No, it's much, much worse than that. I've deceived you as to my real name." "Is it very dreadful?" said Virginia with interest. "It isn't something silly like Pobbles, is it? Fancy being called Mrs. Pobbles." "You are always thinking the worst of me." "I admit that I did once think you were King Victor, but only for about a minute and a half. By the way, Jimmy, I've got a job for you. Gold prospecting in the rocky fastness of Czechoslovakia." "Is there gold there?" asked Jimmy eagerly. "Sure to be," said Anthony. "It's a wonderful country." "So you're taking my advice and going there?" "Yes," said Anthony. "Your advice was worth more than you know. Now for the confession. I wasn't changed at nurse, or anything romantic like that, but nevertheless I am really Prince Nicholas Abalovich of Czechoslovakia." "Oh, Anthony!" cried Virginia, perfectly screaming. "And I have married you? What are we going to do about it?" "We'll go to Czechoslovakia and pretend to be kings and queens. Jimmy McGrath once said that the average life of a king or queen out there is under 4 years. I hope you don't mind." "Mind?" cried Virginia. "I shall love it." "Isn't she great?" murmured Jimmy. Then discreetly he faded into the night. A few minutes later the sound of a car was heard. "Nothing like letting a man do his own dirty work," said Anthony with satisfaction. Besides, I didn't know how else to get rid of 'em. Since we were married, I've not had 1 minute alone with you." "Oh, we'll have lots of fun," said Virginia. "Teaching the brigands not to be brigands and the assassins not to assassinate, and generally improving the moral tone of the country." "I like to hear these pure ideals," said Anthony. "Makes me feel my sacrifice has not been in vain." "Rot," said Virginia calmly. "You'll enjoy being a king. It's in your blood, you know. You were brought up to the trade of royalty, and you've got a natural aptitude for it, just like plumbers have a natural bent for plumbing." "Never think they have," said Anthony. "But damn it all, don't waste time talking about plumbers. Do you know that at this very minute I'm supposed to be deep in conference with Isaacstein and old Lollipop? They went to talk about oil. Oil, my God! They just wait my kingly They can just await my kingly pleasure. Virginia, do you remember my telling you once that I'd have a damned good try to make you care for me?" "I remember," said Virginia softly. But Superintendent Battle was looking out of the window. "Well, he isn't now," said Anthony. He caught her suddenly to him, kissing her eyelids, her lips, the green gold of her hair. That's a weird term, but okay. "I do love you so, Virginia," he whispered. "I do love you so. Do you love me?" He looked down at her, sure of the answer. Her head rested against his shoulders, and very low, in a sweet, shaken voice, she answered, "Not a bit." "You little devil," cried Anthony, kissing her again. "Now I know for certain that I shall love you until I die." And now we're on to the last chapter. Chapter 31. Sundry Details. Scene: Chimneys, 11 a.m., Thursday morning. Johnson, the police constable, with his coat off, digging. Something in the nature of a funeral feeling seems to be in the air. The friends and relations stand round the grave that Johnson is digging. George Lomax has the air of the principal beneficiary under the will of the deceased. Superintendent Battle, with his immovable face, seems pleased that the funeral arrangements have gone so nicely. As the undertaker, it reflects credit upon him. Lord Caterham has that solemn and shocked look which Englishmen assume when a religious ceremony is in progress. Mr. Fish does not fit into the picture so well. He is not sufficiently grave. Johnson bends to his task. Suddenly he straightens up. A little stir of excitement passes round. "That'll do, Sonny," said Mr. Fish. "We shall do nicely now." One perceives at once that he is really the family physician. Johnson retires. Mr. Fish, with due solemnity, stoops over the excavation. The surgeon is about to operate. He brings out a small canvas package. With much ceremony he hands it to Superintendent Battle. The latter, in his turn, hands it to George Lomax. The etiquette of the situation has now been carefully complied with. George Lomax unwraps the package, slits up the oilskin inside it, burrows into further wrapping. For a moment he holds something on the palm of his hand, then quickly shrouds it once more in cotton wool. He clears his throat. "At this auspicious moment," he begins, with the clear delivery of the practiced speaker, Lord Caterham beats a precipitous retreat. On the terrace he finds his daughter. "Bundle, is that car of yours in order?" "Yes, why?" "And take me up to town in it immediately. I'm going to Broad. At once. Today." "But, father—" "Don't argue with me, Bundle. George Lomax told me that when he arrived this morning that he was anxious to have a few words with me privately on the matter of utmost delicacy. He added that the King of Timbuktu was arriving in London shortly. I won't go through with it, Bundle, do you hear? Not for 50 George Lomaxes. If Chimneys is so valuable to the nation, let the nation buy it. Otherwise I shall sell it to a syndicate, and they can turn it into an hotel. Where's Carter's now? Bundle is rising to the situation. At the present minute, replied Lord Caterham, looking at his watch, he is good for at least 15 minutes about the Empire. Another picture. Mr. Bill Eversley, not invited to be present at the graveside ceremony, at the telephone. No, really, I mean it. I say, don't be huffy. Well, you will have supper tonight, anyway. Well, no, I haven't. I've been kept to it, with my nose to the grindstone. You've no idea what Carter's is like. I say, Dolly, you know jolly well what I think about you. You know I've never cared for anyone but you. Yes, I'll come to the show first. How does the old wheeze go? And the little girl tries hooks and eyes. Unearthly sounds. Mr. Eversley trying to hum the refrain in question. And now George's peroration draws to a close. The lasting peace and prosperity of the British Empire. I guess, said Mr. Hiram Fish sotto voce, to himself and the world at large, is that this has been a great little old week. And that is the end. Get Maestro back up here. All right, so we are at the end of our story time, and I'm sorry, I still don't know what we're going to do for the next story time. There are a couple of ideas. We have Stephen Conrad or something like that, the secret agent. So, spies, action type of stuff. There is it Oscar Wilde? No, it's not Oscar Wilde. It's H.G. Wells. What's it called? A Modern Utopia. And then we have the 2 Nellie Bly books. But yeah, I'll post if I can remember to. I have to remember to post up in the Discord and on Twitter with some things to choose between. I'll put up a poll and stuff. And then next story time is going to be on Friday, 2 to 4 Pacific time, same as always. And do we have any suggestion for who to read? Let me take a look at who's on right now. Yeah, there we go. Got Tetratum. Ooh, okay, good. Shiny Wave, Milky Berry, Kipsidaisy. Let's see. Or we could do somebody new. Well, Shania is new, and she, well, not new to us. Hi, Twisted. How are you doing? I was actually just about to end story time with a raid. Do you have any suggestions for who we can raid? Sorry, you arrived just at the end. I do have all of, let me give you the link. Oops, here we go. All of my story times up on YouTube, so you can go watch them there. Or, of course, I have the VODs here, but the YouTube, at least, they don't go away after 14 days. Let's see. Yeah, could do Shiny Wave. We haven't rated her in a couple of weeks, at least. Or Milky Berry. Okay. Yeah, thank you. I just need to put up the one from Friday, and then tomorrow got to put up the one from today. And they're all in playlist form, so you don't have to worry about, finding the next one in the sequence. So I think we will do... Yeah, we'll stick with Shiny. Okay. Oh, that's okay. Like I'm sorry that you just happened to catch me at the end. But my next story time is going to be on Friday, 2 to 4 Pacific time. Yeah, we'll hopefully catch you next time. I hope you do have an awesome day or night or whatever time zone you're in. So here we go. Raid and Shiny Wave. Getting my stream raid message ready. All right. Thanks again for hanging out. I'll see you next time. Yeah, here's hoping, knocking on wood. Do you have my socials? I'll really quickly put up my socials. And I always give an hour's notice before I do my story time so that, people can get here in time and all that stuff. All right, I'll see you next time.